All right, can everyone see the slide, the file?
Looking good.
All right. Now, what we have here is Romans 16:4. We picked up a little bit of, we picked up verse 3 last week with Priscilla and Aquila. And our situation is the first part of verse 5 goes with Priscilla and Aquila. So I put it, as you can see on the top of the screen, I put 5a, verses 4 and 5a. That's what I did with them. So that's how we'll be translating them. That way it puts the material all together that goes together. So I'm going to pick, if I can, Chris Hill. Can you start us here? And let me highlight what I want you to do. You're translating, okay?
Okay.
Highlight it there. Go down to there. All right?
All right. Got it. Romans 16:4.
16:4, please.
Yes. Oi tenes huper tes sukes mu ton eoton trokelon hupethekane. So I have a who for the life of me, the of them or their necks have lain down. So they laid down their necks for Paul's life.
Okay. Now I want to point out something about this. This word here, I'm going to highlight it, is kind of special. It's from hostes. All right. But it's talking about someone in a particular class or category. So he's saying, who have for me people who are like this. And he's setting forth a category of people. Notice the definition here. We could go over to my file, my other file. I didn't messed up. I didn't have it on that, I don't think. But I might have. No, I didn't. Let me do that. Okay. This word here, we come down to it. Well, I'm sorry. I'm going to go back. Hostes. It'd be easier to just do it this way. All right. There it is. All right. What this is, it's talking about someone who's in this category. And Summers tells us, and I don't think I have Summers in the file that you have, but it's in this file, Greek Lexicon Grammar Notes. In function is qualitative in nature, so let me highlight it. It's qualitative in nature. It is usually translated by the simple who, but its meaning is far more than that. The expression who is of such nature. So it's someone of a particular nature. You always look for the qualitative idea in this word. That's what Summers tells us. So somebody of this, it's a category or someone of a particular nature. So he's talking about, he's saying that Priscilla and Aquila are in the category of people who will lay down their necks or put their necks out for you, or would lay down their own necks for you. We could say I know a man, he's the kind of guy that would cut his right arm off for you. That's one of our sayings. And that's a figure of speech, of course. So he's saying they're in the category of people that would do that. He's not necessarily saying they had done it, all right? So here, he's, when we look at this, at this point, let me come over here. At this point, he's not saying necessarily that they had done it up to that point. However, the verb that we have at the end of the verse tells us they did. Am I making sense? Without the verb, we just say they're in the category of people that would do that. But with the verb there that I'll highlight now, he's saying that they did. So they proved they were in that category of people by sticking their neck. We would call it, they stuck their neck out for me. That's the saying that we have in the United States. They stuck their neck out for me. And that's probably from the same basic thrust, same idea, same concept. Are there concepts there? Any questions? All right. Let's look at this word here. Do you see the word trachea in there? Our English word trachea? Say yes. Okay.
It's a good way of
I shook my
remembering.
head so they could all see that, surely.
What'd you say, James?
It's a good way of remembering it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now we come over to this, and I'm going to pick on, well, I can't remember who all is. Okay. All right. Let me highlight it. I think I'll just highlight these, and that way you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not, you're still able to read it. Jerry, would you do that for us?
Okay. Ois, uk, ego, monos, eucharisto, that's what's who, not I alone, give thanks.
Okay, I not alone give thanks. Now, what can you say about ego? Let me highlight it. Anything particular you can point out about it being there, since it's there?
Oh, it's the I is already in the first person singular on give thanks, so it's repeated,
So that makes it what?
emphasized.
So it's emphasized. All right, it's emphatic because the verb has the I in it. Remember that? And so lay down their lives, their own necks, the trachea, see, of whom not I only, not only I. Right here, Thayer tells you, right here, let me highlight it. He tells you that the nominative, ego, and hemes, when joined to a verb, generally have force of emphasis or indicate antithesis. And here it's obvious that it's emphasis, okay? So it's emphatic. Again, I don't know how we would translate that and get the full thrust of it in an English translation. We could almost bold it, make it bold, but I'm hesitant to use bold print over and over because people think that's shouting, okay? So I don't know how to do it, except if you're teaching it and say, you can just say this is emphatic, okay? I guess you could raise your voice when you're reading it, not I alone, see, just raise your voice a little bit. Any suggestions on how to do that? All right. Not only I give thanks. The Roman Catholics call the Lord's Supper, they call it the Eucharist. And that's from the noun form of this word, Eucharisto, Eucharisteo. Eucharisto is in this form here. It's first person singular present indicative active. It's an eo verb and it's contracted. Okay, but give thanks. So I'm giving thanks for you. Now,
Brother,
yes,
Brother Marion, excuse me, I have a question. I have a question. Doesn't flex and tone and voice kind of doesn't it like gives what you're trying to say a uh not a different meaning, but a like you said, emphatic meaning?
yeah, the tone of voice, yes, you can. And
Yes.
there should we should, if we can figure a way out to show the emphasis when we're reading it or teaching it, we need to do that. Because it makes the text richer, people can see more uh, from it. All right. Okay, Freddie, are you ready to do one?
Yes, sir. I'm ready.
Can you do what's highlighted, please?
Yes, sir. Allah, Kai, Kasai, I, Ecclesiai, Ton, Esnan.
Good. Ready.
Okay, and that is saying, but also all the assemblies of the nations.
The nations or the Gentiles, and nations is the correct translation too. Just
Okay.
non-Jews,
Okay.
the nations.
Right.
That is correct. All right. Now the word "but" introduces a new category. See, yeah. Not only am I giving thanks, but also all the churches or assemblies of the nations or of the Gentiles. See? Any
Yeah.
questions? All right. Now look at Allah down here. I pointed out it introduces a new, different category, a different set than what he's just been talking about. And down about, in the case of Allah, the last line, the correcting member was not a member of the original set. It's a new element. So it's introducing something new. And new to what? Well, it's new in that it's not Paul giving thanks. It's the churches giving thanks. Does that make sense, everybody? How far down we go? All the churches of the Gentiles or the nations, which would be correct. Now, what I want you to do, if you will, James, could you do 5a, what we've highlighted here in verse 5,
Okay.
please?
Kaite katoikon auton ecclesian. And the church of their house.
Okay. Now, this article right here, which word does it go with?
House. It's both accusative anyway.
Okay. All right. Probably goes with the word house because it's nearest to it. Do you agree? Okay. But it could go down here. It could be the churches,
Could be assemblies.
the assemblies. That's how I've taken it here. But in my interpretation, down here you see my notes. I'll highlight them. So I've taken it to go with the word church. The church. Okay. All right. And the word kat is from kata, which is a distributive form. And it's a distributive usage. So according to or from place to place, according to the church in their house.
To be at the church, at their house.
Yeah. So it's the church at their house. So here the church was meeting in the home of Priscilla and Aquila. All right. So their house was big enough to accommodate the congregation, however big the congregation was. We don't know how big it was. They didn't have big church buildings, okay, back then. In fact, we have no evidence they had any buildings, okay? I'm not saying it's unscriptural to have a building. I'm just saying they had a place to meet. In this case, it was given to them by the members, okay? Members donated their house and let the church assemble with them. That could happen in a place where there's persecution going on. You might meet in people's houses. You might not meet in the same house every week. You might meet in different houses. And that's the kind of thing that could happen. Any comments or questions there?
Just a quick comment. You had mentioned that Tane probably went with ekklesion, and I would agree. Oikon is masculine, is it not? It would have to fit with ekklesion.
Yeah.
No, that's right.
I think you're right.
Yeah, this is feminine.
Okay.
All right. Oikos, I believe, is masculine. I think you're correct. All right. So the church, it was common for churches to meet in houses, the homes of brethren. The Bible does not specify how we're to meet or where we're to meet. It's just that we're to get together and assemble on the first day of the week. And I would say that the elders have the right to decide what's the most convenient time for the members to assemble. And wise elders will make it convenient for as many of the church members as they can. Make it for the maximum of them. And if people, if there's a few people that can't make it, maybe the other brethren will have the love for them to give up some of their convenience for the sake of the benefit of the other members. That's where love comes out. So if we had some members that had trouble making it, I could see that happening in the first century with slaves. They just can't get off their work until at night. So the church might have to meet it at some other times, some strange times. Okay. But we're going to do what's going to get the most there as much as we can. Try to give up our liberty if we have to for the convenience of those that just can't make it otherwise. All right. Any questions?
Yeah, a comment anyway, or a question. With the early church in Jerusalem in particular, I can imagine that there were more than just a dozen or 2 dozen people, that there were enough people that would have overflowed several houses, and the assembly together for all of those people would have had to have been, I would guess, outside.
But it would have if they assembled as one congregation. I think they broke up into many different congregations.
Okay.
That's what I think they did. I can't prove it, but there'd be nothing wrong with it. You're not splitting the church. You're just setting up different congregations. They're all still in fellowship with one another. I would think that'd be the way to do it. If we get persecuted in the United States, and it could happen to us, if it happens, I think we'll have to go to meeting in homes. And probably the wisest thing to do would not meet in the same home every week. Just move from one place to another. Go from different places. Maybe even different times. So, to not show a pattern to anybody. Okay. But that could happen to us. And probably does happen in some places in the world where they're persecuted. Like, or we have brethren in Pakistan, and some of them have been killed. Okay. All right. And so if Muslims took over the United States, we're going to be persecuted. We could be persecuted by other people too before that. All right, let's go to chapter 16, verse 5b. Verse 5b. Let me see. James, you did the last one, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Who else is here that can do the translating? Wants to do it? Let me do this. Let me do this then. I'll go back to Chris. I think Chris Hill was first. We'll go back to Chris. Chris, can you translate what I've highlighted there in verse 16? And it's part B, the second half of the verse. 16.
Yes. Aspas, let's see. Aspas aste, epain, eton, tone, agapaton, mu.
Okay.
So the first word is greet, and it's aorist middle imperative. So I put a lot of words in there, but I put you all begin to greet Epinetus, the beloved of me, or my beloved.
Okay. And so you got the good thrust of the aorist imperative. Begin to do something. See. So it's something that they hadn't greeted him for the sake of Paul. And so what he's saying to you tell him, you begin to tell him right now, you tell him now, send him my greetings, salute him. And of course you're going to tell him he's also well beloved. I tell you what, that'd be something really neat to have an apostle say he loved you. All right? And what part of speech is this word here, which I'll highlight? Agapaton.
I have a adjective.
That's correct. It's an adjective.
Accusative singular masculine is what I put.
Yep, that's what it is. So we know that this Ephanatus is a man. See, it's a masculine adjective. Okay. Now let's take the next one. Was Jerry the second reader? I can't remember.
Yeah.
All right. So Jerry, will you take to the end of the verse, please?
Okay. Hos estin, aparche, ace, Achaeus, ace, Christon,
So,
who is first fruit of Achaia for Christ.
okay. Who is first fruit? Now,
Firstling.
now that right there's some disagreement about what that means. Who is first fruit? Some take it to mean that he's the first one converted, but he's of the first fruits. It's translated first fruits, but it's,
I've got singular, is it?
yes, it is singular, and I think first fruit is correct, but they take it to be fruit there is used in a collective sense, probably.
Okay.
Probably how they're doing it. That's how they translated fruits. So what we have here, if he's it just could mean that he's one of the first converts, or it could mean that Achaia here, he's one of the first ones converted in Paul's first journey through that area. So it doesn't necessarily mean he's the first one converted. Okay. Does that make sense what we're saying? Now, the first fruits come down to Achaia, and there's a textual problem with this. So some of your translations may have Asia there. And so right here, the bottom of the screen is what's the majority text has Achaia, and it's supported by all of these manuscripts. Okay. And here is the reading of the Asia, and I've got it laid out on the very bottom of the screen. It is a textual problem, okay? And I go with the F-35, of course, it's supported by the majority text, which is most of the manuscripts, and then all these other manuscripts, which I'll highlight right now, that are not part of the majority text. These right here are not part of the majority text, so all of those extra, in addition to majority text, are also supporting it. All the Syriac manuscripts support it as well. Okay. Any questions or comments? All right. So here are the only documents that support the reading of Asia. Those manuscripts there. LATT is all the Latin manuscripts. Okay. All right. It's not a big deal as far as it's not going to affect our salvation. I still think it's Achaia. Okay. Any questions or comments? All right. So he is the first fruits of Achaia, and some read Asia. All right. Unto Christ. Okay. And so he's the first one of that first group that was converted to Christ. That would be him being Messiah and serving him as Lord and King. Okay. Any questions? All right. Now, this is long enough. Who was the next reader? Was it Freddie or James? James?
Yes, sir.
Can you read this right here, and then we'll have Freddie to read the next one.
Okay.
Okay. Pasas the Mariam. Hades pola ekopiasan eis humas. And I translated it, Great Mary who labored much for you.
Okay. And would you transliterate that Mary that's in this text?
Mariam?
Miriam. And it's the name Miriam, isn't it?
Yes.
And that leads us to think she's probably what race?
Jewish.
Probably Jewish. She's probably a Jew because she has the name Miriam, which is a common name for Jewish women. Miriam. But there's a textual variant there, and some of the manuscripts read different. Now, it's an indeclinable form of Maria. Well, the name Maria, that's a Spanish name, isn't it? Well, it's a Greek name first. Maria. All right. Let's look here. Here, majority text out here is supported by all these manuscripts, right? And the other reading, the alternate reading, and is Marion. Marion. Hey, that's a name I've heard before. Marion. All right. Salute Mary, who bestowed much labor on you. We don't, do we? Do we know what labor she bestowed on them? I don't think we do we? There's no way of knowing. He just tells us she labored. And she labored. Now look at the word labor. It's to be weary or exhausted. Grow weary or exhausted. There it is. With toil and burdens of grief, labor with wearisome toil, effort or toil. So we might use our English word toil when you really labor hard for it. So she's not lazy. She's busy working for the Lord. All right? So she's doing stuff for the church. I don't know what she did, but I know she didn't do anything that was sinful. Does that make sense? They wouldn't praise her for that. So she wasn't a preacher, okay? All right, does that make sense what we're saying? She might have even been a prophetess in the church, functioning under the role of what a prophetess could do, because they had them at that time. We just don't know. Any questions? We're verse 7. All right. Let's do this. Let's go from right there and all the way down to here. Right? And if you would, I guess we're back to Freddie. Is that right?
Yeah.
Shane come into class? Shane, are you there?
Uh,
I guess he's not there. Okay. Can you take that for us there, Freddie?
yes. Oh, did you say me?
Yes. I was
Okay,
asking
sure.
if Shane was there, and I didn't see him come in. I can't tell whether he's in or not. I have to get out of this file to see.
Okay. Verse 7.
What I've highlighted.
Okay. Sure. As passaste andronicon kai Ionian, Ionian, tus, Sigenis, Mu, Kai, Sunai, uh, Sunai, Kas, Malotus, Sunai, Chalotus,
Yes.
Chalotus, Mu.
Okay.
Okay, and I translated that as Greek, Andronicus, and Junius, my kinsmen and fellow prisoners, mine.
Okay. All right. Now, here we get into a situation here. Andronicus and Junia. Some think Junia was a woman, but we'll get to that in just a minute. My kinsman. Now, notice the word kinsman. It's a combination of the word soon, and because there's a gamma there, and I'll put the hyphen in, I'll space it, let you see what we're talking about. This was a new here. What I've highlighted was a new. It's a new instead of a gamma. And put them together to become a gamma. Okay, so that's what that is. And Genesis is the generation or the people that are kin to you. You're generated from the same people. You're from the same people. Your relatives. And so that's someone who's with you, generated with you. And that would be a kinsman. I don't think it's a fellow Jew. I take this to be different because he identifies some who we know are Jews, but he doesn't use this term for them. I think this was like a cousin to him or someone like that. Someone who's a relative. One of your cousins or probably a cousin, okay? What we call a cousin. Any comments there about anybody? So what about this word down here, class? Can you tell me anything about it?
It's with.
It's got soon, it's got with it. So that's just hyphen it. There's where the with, there's soon. That's with, okay? And that's a close relationship, that soon is. Go ahead, Freddie, what are you going to say?
The one that you highlighted, uh, I no comments. I'm just listening. Sorry.
Okay, well, that's all right. All right. Go back to Junius in just a minute. But let's go down and look at that word here just a moment here. And I want to see, you to see it.
Is that plural? So it's one of the fellow prisoners?
Yes, it's actually someone captured with a spear. It's a prisoner of war. Now, is Paul at war? Is he at war physically?
He's under.
No. Is he at war
No.
spiritually?
Yes.
Is he in spiritual warfare? Don't anybody talk at once.
Yes.
Yes, he's in a spiritual warfare with Satan and anybody that would be in league with Satan. And how does he conquer them?
Sword of the word.
With the sword of the word, he converts them. Does that make sense? So that's how they're conquered. They're won to Christ. All right. Let's go back now. So it's actually not a normal prisoner like you'd think of someone put in jail for stealing or robbing or doing something like that, or murder or something like that. It's a prisoner of war. So it's a figure that's used for that, and he's telling them, in effect, I'm here because I'm in the Lord's church in His army, His spiritual army. All right. Any questions or comments? All right. Junius. And of course, there is a textual variant. Let's scroll down. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I have a question. Okay, back up in the latter part of verse number 3, when he's addressing Priscilla and Aquila, he said, "My fellow workers in Christ." But in this particular one, he says he's my fellow prisoner.
Yes, he's used the same preposition "soon" with all three of these instances. Fellow prisoners, kinsmen, all three. All right here, this word here that I'll highlight has "soon" built into it. Come on now, cut that out. There's "soon" right there, and here's "soon" over here. And we have it also in verse 3, as you pointed out, fellow workers. And the word, if you study it, let me get into it right quick. And this is good material for us to think about. And let's come down, just go to the end. It's down. Past it. There it is. Let me put it on top of the screen. This word here, and let me highlight it. I'll highlight it right quick so you can find it. It's found 128 times in the New Testament, and its meaning is it's used almost exclusively with persons. I'll highlight that part of it. Almost exclusively with persons, and implies close fellowship and cooperation. It's different than para. See, para could be with, but this word here indicates a close fellowship and cooperation. Let's go up to para. The word para could mean with also. Let me do it here, do it easier. right here, para. That word is used with persons, and it's beside, to be beside, okay? But it's more of a source, from the side of. So soon is indicates a close relationship or fellowship. All right, any questions? All right, that would be your use of the three words back in verse 3 and here as well. Any comments? Ready? Did I answer your question, or did I not clarify it, or? Okay. Let's try Junia now. Let's look at Junia and try it. Here is the majority text reading right here. And the majority text has the same reading as the compiled text. That's the Lamb 28. They're all the same. There are a couple of manuscripts, a few manuscripts that read differently, but all of these read this masculine gender form of it. All right. So Junia, Junius, American Standard reads Union, and it's a convert from Judaism, they think. And Junia, the authorized version, that would be your King James, has it to be a woman's name, which they say is possible. The name occurs again in the name of a Christian in Rome, Romans 16:15 that we're looking at here, according to Thayer. All right. This Greek word is masculine gender, but some claim the women's names are sometimes in the masculine gender. I think being masculine gender just fits much better. It's a man. However, some argue that some early ancient commentators thought it was a husband and wife. And Barrett and Gingrich claim that's ruled out by the context. Right? Right. Any questions there? There are two lines of evidence that union is masculine gender. First, the best Greek text has it as masculine. That's pretty solid. Second, there's no feminine gender antecedents, adjectives, participles, or pronouns modifying it. All right? They get the feminine gender from the King James rendering, and I believe maybe a footnote in it, and also in the English Standard Version. And what's kind of odd to me is some try to make this women, and they're the very people that reject the King James Version. Okay, they're not very consistent, and so King James and the Textus Receptus have it in that form. Okay. Any questions? All right. Now we came down to here. And we come back. Let's try this. I've forgotten where I am. Who's next to read?
Yeah, I think it was after that first move.
You read down to the move, yes. Who's next in the reading order? I forgot.
I think we're back to Chris.
Chris, can you read this?
Yes.
Okay, please.
Point tenes teens essen episemoi en tois apostolois oi kai pro emu geg on assen in Christo.
Okay.
All right, so I start off with who are outstanding among the ones sent, or the apostles, who also before me were to continue to be in Christ.
All right, now see, here's where this comes into becomes a problem, because they want to make this to be an apostle, okay, and they want union to be a female or woman apostle. All right, so that's where the argument kind of goes in here. That's why this is somewhat important. Okay. Any comments there? All right. So again, let's look at it down here a little more, and maybe it'll help us a little bit. This is hoitinais. It's the same word we had earlier, right here. Those are that nature, see, it's someone of this nature. They are of the nature to be what? Of note. Of note where?
Among the apostles.
In or among, and in could be among the apostles.
I didn't say either one of them are apostles. I just says they're noted by the apostles.
Okay, it's ambiguous. It could be that they're in the apostles, but it could also be that they're of note and the apostles recognize them as being good people. See, right? That might even indicate they're known by the apostles. They could have been early converts in the church. They might have been some of the people from Rome in Acts chapters 1 and 2 who probably obeyed the gospel. Okay? And so they would have been known by the church. And maybe the apostles laid their hands on them and gave them miraculous gifts. Does that make sense what we're saying? So it doesn't prove that they were apostles, right? So what we have here is we don't have any proof of that. And I think we can argue that there were only 14 apostles if you count Judas Iscariot, but he forfeited his right and lost it in Acts 1. We see that. So we're down to 13, counting Paul being number 13, leaving out Judas. Okay. And Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15, he's the last of all, the last apostle. So he would be the last one. All right. Any questions or comments? Now I'm going to give you some quotes here. Tropically, and that means figuratively, right here. And he's citing our passage in question that's there. Latin insignias, both in a good and a bad sense, of note or illustrious. They're noted by them. They could be noted by them, right? Among the apostles. Now here's Expositor's Greek Testament, and let me highlight it, that you see what they say. Again, this is a commentary, I understand. Understand that. Here's the full reference. It cites this in the Greek. Men of mark among the apostles has the same ambiguity in Greek as in English. It might mean well known to the apostolic circle or distinguished as apostles. See? All right? And so he lets us know it could be either way. So again, there's nothing in the verse that forces them to be apostles. This means Robertson Word Picture, Volume 4, his book, I think it's a 5-volume set if my memory's right. Naturally, this means that they are counted among the apostles in a general sense true of Barnabas, James, brother of Christ, Silas, and others. But it could mean, can mean simply that they were famous in the circle of the apostles in a technical sense. Again, he's telling us it's ambiguous. We can't know. I think the usage of hoitinais, this pronoun, probably means, and I'll highlight my points here, it probably means that this is one who is of such a nature to be illustrious to the apostles, not one of the apostles. They're in the category of the people that the apostles have great respect for whom the apostles have great respect. That's what I think it means. Comments or questions? See any in the church any female apostles, okay? This is a stretch. Who also have been in Christ when?
Before me.
Before me. So what does that mean? They were what?
They were in Christ before he became converted.
All right, they were Christians, members of the Lord's church before he was. That's what that means. that would go back to my theory that they might have been there in Acts 2 and been converted there, and that's how the apostles knew them. All the apostles knew them because they were baptized in maybe Acts 2 of that group, or very early at that time, and they were around the apostles. See, the apostles all knew them. See, that's my theory. Again, that I'm just setting forth what is, to me, seems very likely to be the case. I'm not dogmatic about it, certainly. Okay. All right. Now notice this word here, have been. Let me highlight it. It's perfect tense. So it's third person plural perfect. Indicative active. Genomai. Came to be. They became. And they have been and still are. They came to be and still are in Christ before me. All right. Again, I highlight here, I find it most interesting that the people that want to press for women apostles, by and large, reject the King James Version of the Bible, okay? But they have to go to the King James Version mostly to get the support for it, all right? And to me, that's kind of humorous, okay? Any questions? There are some patristic commentaries that claim this was a woman, all right? All right. The Bible speaks of three kinds of apostles. We've been through that already. We're not going to go back through it. I'll highlight it for the sake of anybody looking at it on the internet. That's my notes. You can pause your computer. Let us, only for the sake of argument, assume that Junius, which I think to be a man, should be translated Junia, a woman. And both Andronicus and Junia are apostles. They could be husband and wife, like Aquila and Priscilla, have been sent out as apostles of the church to accomplish some work. Now, back up here, we have it here. Let me do this. Let me get this up. That would put them into this category here, see? Right there. We have three kinds of apostles: apostles of Christ, apostles of God, and apostles of the church. And of course, we have Acts 14:14, 1 Corinthians 15:7, 2 Corinthians 8:23, Philippians 2:25, and so forth for apostles of the church. These people sent out with us with a job for the church to do. I think technically a missionary, what we call missionaries that are sent out, are actually apostles of the church. I would certainly not advise to call them that because of confusion. I'd just still call them missionaries if somebody sent out with a job. Church sent them out to preach, to work, to do work in the church. May send a man and his wife out, and the man may preach, and the wife may teach Bible classes, and they're both doing the work of the church. Does that make sense? Chris, didn't you and your wife do that?
We've been in Romania and done a little bit of that, and she taught the ladies the children's classes over there in Bucharest, and I did some preaching.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I'm talking about here. Okay, so they could have been like that, and they still would have been called apostles in the sense of apostles of the church, not apostles of Christ. Any questions anybody has? Okay. We're getting pretty close to the end. Let's do one more verse, and then we'll be through for tonight. And I've forgotten who read last. Chris, did you read last?
Yes.
Go back to Jerry.
Yeah. Okay. Aspasaste, Leon, tone, agape tone, mu, and curio. Salute Amplius, my beloved in Lord.
Okay, we usually insert the word "the" with that, Lord, in the Lord. But good translation. Any comments there? we've already talked about this expression, in the Lord, in Kurio, right here. Let me highlight it. We talked about that earlier. I believe last week we talked about it. We had a fairly lengthy discussion. I'd refer you back to verse 2 in our discussion under that. What this means is because the word in the Lord, as we defined it back in verse 2, so I'll refer you back to their notes on that, it means that Ampliatus had an understanding of the will of God. So in the Lord means to have understanding of God's will and to be intimate or have close, intimate relationship with God. So Ampliatus knew he understood God's will, and he was intimate, he was close to God. He was living the way God wanted him to live. That's speaking a whole lot about a person, I think.
And I think that's the very reason he was beloved.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay. Any comments anyone has? All right. We still got a minute or two, but let me say this. We have the textual readings for it. There is a variant here. And again, that's footnote 690. Let me go back up to it and let you see it. And for the sake of anyone that's watching it on the internet, you can have it. His name here. And so we have the spelling of his name. That's all it is, just a variant. The computer's not, it's kind of lock up on me. There's your text, there's your footnote on it. That's the majority text reading is supported by this and all of these manuscripts here. And of course, the Vaticanus. And when they have a 2 on this Vaticanus, like up here, that is, somebody tried to correct it or change the reading. So it's with different ink. And so they've been able to determine that there's been a corrector, somebody changed it. This is probably the first correction on it, right? First change, maybe more than one. Somebody else might have tried to change it back, and it would be a different ink. So they can scan it now with some really sophisticated equipment to do that. Right? Any questions? Moharic manuscripts would be Egyptian, one of the Egyptian languages in Syria. Go with verse 9 next week. Start with verse 9. All right. Any questions or comments? All right.
Thank you, Brother Marion. I appreciate it.
I appreciate your attendance and participation. All right.